Hi guys, and welcome back to the painting channel. Today I'm going to do another abstract for you. Last week's was really popular, so I thought I'd do another one. So let's roll that intro and let's see what happened. Hi everybody, welcome back. As I said just now, I'm going to be doing another watercolor abstract in two colors, another landscape, and it's hot on the heels of last week's successful video. Now I say successful, it's had a lot of responses, a lot of views, very short period of time, and also a lot of comments asking for more and more and more of the same sort of thing. So I felt, let's do it, let's go for it, and let's have some fun. So without further ado, let's get going. Let's see what happened. Okay, before we go any further, a little bit about the paper I'm using today. It is Fabriano Artistico Extra White, and it is called Aquello or Aquarello watercolor paper. Now, its important numbers are these ones. Not so much this one, 300 grams per square meter, but this one. This is 140 pounds, 20 sheets, 9 by 12 or 23 by 30.5 centimeters, but moreover it is in a block. Now my block has come adrift from the back, as you can see, and I've got it prepped up ready to go. But essentially we have a block of paper that is gummed on all of the sides, with the exception of one small area, normally shown or sort of indicated by, in this case, that little mark there. You can see where the gum stops. If I hold that to the light, no, it's not going to show it too well. There you are. You can just see where the gum stops. And this part here, when your paper is dry, when your painting is dry, then it is a great idea to put a credit card in there and just run the credit card around the whole thing, and it will release that piece of paper. Now I say credit card, stiff plastic, something like that, but do not use a knife. You will cut straight through that piece of paper and destroy your painting, or indeed the next piece of paper underneath. So always use a soft edge credit card. Much better idea. Now once again we are using just the two colors, which is the D.Smith Pyrrol Orange, Transparent Pyrrol Orange, and we're using Winsor Newton Payne's Grey. So those are the two colors of choice. I will show you some of these later on another video with other colors. So what am I doing color brush wise? Well, I have two brushes. These are all three brushes, sorry. I can't even count. These brushes are all from Rosemary & Company. This is a lovely big flat brush for great big washes on great big pieces of paper, if you would like that. It's a 1.5 inch and they call it Series 303, but it's a lovely brush. Holds a good amount of water, a good amount of color. But I'm not sure if I'm going to use that one today. I'm going to go instead for two of Rosemary's Hake brushes. Now I've got the large one and I've got the smaller one, and it's only a tiny piece of paper. I mean, I could put this on, but I'd swamp it in about 30 seconds flat. So I'm going to put that down for a moment and use the smaller one of the two. This is Series 733 and it's a 30mm Hake. So there you are, Rosemary & Company. Don't forget, if you want to order any of Rosemary's brushes, when you go to checkout, if you just use the affiliate link code of Paul Apps, all capitals, unbroken, that would be fantastic. It does help me out a little bit with a little bit of commission. That would be fantastic. Okay, the paper I'm using, as I said what the make was, but I forgot to tell you that it was actually hot press. Hot press paper can put up with an awful lot of messing around, and that's what I'm going to be doing on this one today. I could happily use a knot surface or indeed a rough surface. Okay, so let's stop the yabbering. Let's get on with some painting. So where do I want to go with this? Well, I want to put a bit of a sky in, so I'm just going to wet this around a little bit. I want to see what happens, but I'm just putting a little bit of that transparent orange in. I want to put a bit of a soft wash through here like that. That looks nice. Going to leave that alone. Come back in with some of the dark, some of the grey color, and picking up. Now this is fresh squeezed paint, so it's always going to pick up more pigment a lot quicker than if you've got dry paint and playing around with that. So I'm just going to put this in and see what happens. Just going to play around, and if I like what I've got, fantastic. But I do want to sort of suggest maybe a snowy field. This is going to be the sky, I think. And this is it. I have no idea at this point how this paint is going to end up. And I'm just having fun. That's what I tried to express you in a previous video. Look at that lovely dry brush with that hay. Very quickly scratched around. And you're creating these beautiful fields like that. Lovely fields of snow and furrows and bits and pieces. Not quite sure what you're looking at. And at this point, it really doesn't matter. But if I don't like something, all I need to do with this now is just get my little water sprayer. I quite like that, but I'm just going to gently let that come down and let that fizzle off to one side. Now, why I've got my towel in my hand is quite simply that I can pick up all this paint that is coming down. On here, while I'm playing around with this, I can come in and I can put a whole load of paint in here. Just let this come in here, and then I can use my spray, just wet that down. Okay, so I am just going to move this down now, take this off here. That's picked up a bit of water. That I could have done without. To be quite honest with you, let's just take that away, take that off of there, and see what's going to happen with that. I'm just letting things do what it, you know, exactly what they want to do, and I'm just playing around. Now I have some control because I put the paint on here to start with. I decided I wanted to put the paint there, so to a degree you have control over what happens. But once you've put something into progress, once you've set it off as it were, then you don't really fully know how it's going to end. I just like trying to see exactly what we're going to get from this. But this is also, as much as it is random, this is about having a little bit of patience too, because you could dry this quickly with a hairdryer, nothing wrong with that, but you will restrict the ultimate flow of what may or may not have happened with that painting. And I want a little bit of a soft orange back through here now. I'm going to play around with this a little bit more. Let that run down and run into the scene. Where's my spray bottle? But I don't want it coming too far this way. So what I'm going to do is let it come down this way and change the direction of all of this paint where it's going. Picking it up, don't want it to run off too far. Now sometimes these work well, and sometimes you just do all of this and at the end of the day you actually don't have anything. You know, it's not a guarantee, but it is nice trying to create something, and ultimately it does work. I'm going to run that now at an angle this way, and let's see how that goes. This is causing me a little worry here. So what I might do with that is I might just come in with a round brush, pick up some of that dark and run that in through there, putting a little bit more paint than water at this point. Just put that in there like that. So pick that up a little bit more through there. Just darken up some of these strokes that I put in. But again, I can quite happily play around with that. Just let that run down a little bit. See what happens to it. That's quite nice. I like that there. Well, it'd be better if I didn't put my finger in it, of course. Lift some of that off. Take that down. Interesting, this mark being put through here. I'll lift a little bit out in one or two places. Again, a kitchen towel or paper towel is extremely useful. Take some of that off there, don't want that. pushing back. I quite like that little sort of hill in the distance. That is going to be nice. So that's going to run into that space where I just lifted, but it's going to leave me this little sort of hill type shape back there. We're going to let this dry quite naturally, because if I do go in with a hairdryer too soon, I'm going to end up wrecking what I've got, because it stops it moving, stops it doing its own organic thing. And I quite like what we've got there so far. I like that division of the cloud. We don't have to put any more into that if we don't want to, or we can come back when it's dry and layer it up, or when it's semi-dry we can actually add some colours that will move but a lot less. Now this is drying out here. There's a little sheen on here. What I want to do is I want to put a little bit of table salt onto this painting now. Now this is just general household salt. Just want to put that in. I want to bring some up into the area here. I want to suggest some nice growth up in there. So I'm going to put that into the sky, let that do its thing, and then once that's dry we can brush it off, and then we can see where we can do some more painting on this and see what it says, really. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be funny when I say see what it says to you. Quite literally, I mean that, you know, when the painting's dry, it will suggest things to you. It will make you feel about certain things. I mean, here we can have some growth, we can have some weeds growing up, and the salt will eradicate some of those and make some beautiful marks that could suggest seed heads. Alternatively, we could build this up into a lovely crashing wave with the water in front. This could be the spray that's coming up from there, and that could be a piece of headland. So there are so many possibilities. It's just letting the mind sort of do and wonder and think and just come up with things. It's amazing how powerful our brains are at seeing pattern, shapes and forms in so many things that we do. So I'm going to put this to one side, and I'll come back to this painting once it's dry and we can continue with the whole idea. Okay, so this is dried off nicely. I've brushed the salt away, and there are some varied marks. You can see some very, very fine pimples of absorption from the salt way down here. And where I've clumped a little lesser, or it's a little wetter, the wetter it is, the more you're going to get this sort of thing happening. So there's a whole variety of different marks created by that. I love the way this is dried up. We got this beautiful subtle suffusion between the warm and the cool here. Works really nicely. Now what is this saying to me? To be quite honest with you, I'm a little bit sort of in the air with it, to be quite honest, because in a sense we've got distance, we've got a big field of snow, maybe a hill in the distance, so we have that perspective. But this really is giving me a whole new perspective, a much closer one, and I'm unsure in my head right this second which way to go. So once again, I think I'm going to wing it and just see what happens. I'm tempted, part of me sort of, I can see sort of, I don't know, weeds or grasses and stuff that have grown up and are shedding. A couple of these sort of bits that fly off, like, you know, bulrushes and that, when they've flowered and they break away into the air and they sort of float away in the wind. So I may go with that idea, but what I'm going to do first and foremost is let's get some colour going on here again, and to that I'm going to play around with, it's a Rosemary and Company sword liner, but it's made from squirrel hair and it is so floppy and unpredictable, it's quite amazing. So I just want to put on a few sets of very soft colour in some warms and cools and just see what happens with that. I'm going to have to use the spray bottle again just to see where that's going to go, what's going to happen with it. Because what I'm trying to do is suggest growth, trees, something like that. And that run off the top there. It's going to stain the whole of this area, which is quite exciting because you never quite know how that's going to end up. Love that warmth in there. I'm going to let that come down, gently tease it where I can with the towel. Just let that come down. Okay, just stop that and rest that around there. Interesting. Okay, so maybe now if I leave this to dry here, or even just play around with a bit more of the sort of darks in here, that's very, very wet. It's going to cause me more issues than I really want to play around with. So I'm just going to let that run back this way and let this dry up for yet another period of time. And then we can carry on working. Hopefully I will get, is now sort of suggesting a wave, but I don't think I'm going to go that way with it. I'm sort of saying all these things, what it may or may not make me feel like, just to give you an idea of some of my thought process as and why and how and when I paint. So I'm just going to see if I can just tap in what could be construed as sort of branches or some sort of growth or something. Now it's quite wet and it's going to dissolve, it's going to move, it's going to do all sorts of things that really we may not want that to do too much of, but I'm quite happy to see where this goes. At the end of the day, if it doesn't do anything other than end up in a bin, the whole thing was a worthwhile exercise just to see what would happen if I did this or if I did that. Now I'm losing quite a bit of my beautiful salt patterning down here. At the end of the day, it is what it is. I'm starting to get a feeling now for a little bit of nearby landscape, maybe something that's grass is growing on the edge of a ridge through here. You bring that down, bring that up into that area, maybe just using a rigger for this. Very, very dryish in pigment on my brush, bringing a little bit of warmth into some of that. A little bit of orange, tap some of that pure orange in, that almost neat paint, very creamy paint, not a lot of water. That will then spread in the available water around it. Let's just draw, they're looking a little bit regimental there. Let's just bring them out and warm the accent against the blues. Quite like what that's happening with that. Okay, that's really nice. Unsure about this one yet. So what I think I'll do with this one is I'm going to turn it upside down and I'm just going to gently control where I spray. Just run this out through the top a little bit. Just let that diffuse out. Like that. Keep an eye on where it's going. Take any excesses away, especially down the side here. Take the top bit off. We don't want it all running back down because I'm going to tip this over the other way again very, very shortly and see where that's going to go. Now all of a sudden we've got something that's really quite interesting. I like the way this is happening. I really do. I think that is wonderful. I'm going to keep that tipped a little bit because it's draining away from the top and I want as much as I can get to hit the top. So I'm taking the excesses off of there. Take it, dry it down that side. And although this started off looking a bit like a tree up in here, I think we've got an overall feeling of something's there. I'm just lifting a little bit with dampness and a semi-dry piece of paper, just turning it around, just lifting back out some of that so that we get a bit more mottling. especially in here, so it's going to dry up a little bit hard, so that it has a bit of a confused area of light to where it goes away. Now that's pooling there. Let's take that off a little bit. Still worry about some of this here, so I'm just going to tap back in right on the edge just to arrest all that movement. And this in itself can be a great technique to play around with, just these dabs, because you introduce little sort of abstract patterns of light into the paintwork, and that has great advantages, especially if you use a scrunched up piece without a proper edge to it. You know, just throw it in there and just see what bits touched by the paper, how it lifts paint out, and have a little play. Almost now I'm almost drawing into this paint, creating little bits of grasses, suggested grasses catching light in this dark. It's quite fun. All experimentation, as I've told you. Now the more I dab, the more I lift out any moisture and arrest movement. So the more I do this, I can tap it back to a very dull light pattern within the darks, creating a sense of plants that are sort of, I don't know, leaving themselves felt, you know, little light bits, but then we can move back into that again. So I like what we've got there. I'm now going to sit and wait for that to dry very patiently, and then we can come back in and we can finish this one off. Okay, so now this is totally dried off, and although there are sort of marks around here, I don't dislike any of them. I think that we've got this beautiful transition again. As we had here, we've got another one happened here. And I feel that what I'm going to be doing is almost using the soft dagger brush again, or indeed a rigger brush, to create some more structure in here with the darks and the warms, very similar to this in here. Maybe a little soft suggestion of some sort of trees and bushes over there to make that a hill in the distance, and I think that will work with a small brush, a small round brush. So let's go for that first and foremost. Now we're going to be using some of the blue, a colour of blue that is probably a little more like tea, maybe somewhere between tea and coffee, but quite light, not too heavy a colour. And then we can just start putting it in here, and fairly crudely. Now it's going to dry lighter, and I think that even that is a little too dark. I'm just going to take some off. I just want the merest hint that there is something going on way off in the distance there to give that some sort of degree of aerial perspective and perspective generally, you know, so that we can see that we've got a distance between here and all of this in the foreground. And I think it just puts it into a bit of context now. And I'm just playing around with the edge and the shapes, and a couple of them can be tall trees, can be almost what you want it to be, and they're just merely taps of the brush, nothing more. Now if I want to be a little bit more than that, I can come through here and I can sort of suggest some trees coming down this way, a few dotted across the hillside. Let some of these taps go into that broken tap area there, and we've already got a lovely background to our foreground. So let's come back to the foreground. That was very quick, very easy to finish off and do. Let's come back in here and let's play around with some structure now. And I want to sort of suggest a lot of water. Didn't like that. There's a lot of water hanging up in that brush. It's a trade-off with this brush. You can see with not enough water in it, it really struggles to find a decent shape to work with, and it's that sort of trade-off. But if you get it right, it will be fine. So I'm just trying to create a sense of structure now. So we've got this lovely diagonal sense going across our painting and creating a wonderful design and composition that way, but trying to keep everything just a little bit loose, and you know, the whole thing is about this abstract. But with every mark that we make now, we're becoming a little less abstract. We're coming back to the reality of a scene. We're coming back to some sort of sense of organization, which is counter to maybe what we seek to do when it comes to our abstract watercolor. But hopefully we can keep this enough and interesting enough to suggest that it is still very much an abstract. I think that, yeah, I like the idea of the design. I do like the idea of sort of going so far with chaos or transitions or using various different techniques to create different forms. And I love to sort of balance that with something that you can actually pin an identity with, an idea with, and understand it more. Very thick paint I put in then. It was picked up by the brush. I'm not too worried about it, but I will, I think, try and drop a little bit of that out with some water. And I'm just going to gently pass the brush over that so that it warms up this foreground. Tap some away. Just let that warm up and leave some of that pure paint pigment to register on top. Almost, I mean, it's almost opaque in a sense. It shouldn't be, because it is very much a transparent color or translucent color. I think transparent color. So having it so thickly set upon the top of the painting can work against you, but I'm working with it. I put it on there. I'm just coming back in with a tap or two of paper to lift some of that off and create a sense of more depth. The thing is that when I put that on, that became very, very opaque, very, very solid in color, and I wanted to look into that bush more. So I've gone back in with a piece of clean towel, and I've just used that to take off some of the excess paint, allowing me now to put some more paint on. It's still going to move because the paper is damp, but it's not going to flood and it's not going to crash around and do anything it wants to. It's still being held back by a little bit less water on the surface. Okay, let's put in a little bit of water here and just soften some of these areas here. So I just want to bring this across some of these colours to break them up a little bit. So we've got more information here, and we've got sort of some heavy growth going on. But now I want to sort of suggest that some of that is coming this way as well. So we've got one or two pieces up here, and we're going to reinforce that area now with one or two other pieces of debris on the ground. Okay, and I need to make a change here because this was a really nice sort of flush across the fields, but we've actually changed the dynamic of the perspective at this point, so we are going to have to change what we're doing here on this part of the field. So I'm going to come in, I'm just going to literally tap around one or two of these areas, just creating a sense of the little bits of growth that pop through the snow in different places. So we've got a little bit of a difference going on with the colours, the foliage, and the plants, sort of the old last year's planting. I think the old sticks of whatever poking through the snow. That's what I'm trying to say. That's maybe a little wetter. It's getting a little bit dry. Now here you don't want to make them too weak in pigment because of course they will fade off as they dry. So, and some of these, bringing them right the way down out of the picture plane, gives a sense that they're still coming this way, which is nice. I think it's quite important, things like that. But I hope that this will then give a bit of a finish to the whole piece. And I'm just scratching around here now. you can imagine old nettles and all sorts of gubbins around here. Old bits and pieces, old bits of growth, old ramblers. Okay, hopefully that does what it's meant to do. I hope that we've created something that is abstract with a little toe still in some form of representational art. Just going to tap in there. I put some water to that, almost drawing in. I didn't mean that to be. I'm dropping water everywhere here. I'm just drawing in with this brush and trying to create sort of softness and eat back into the paint a little bit by releasing some of the pigments off the paper. Okay, right, last part and we are done, I think, and that is to just have a few more taps of information in here, so we have yet a further level of information in the shadow area. You can imagine a whole load of weeds and bits and pieces here, I hope. Okay, last thing, and I'm just going to do a little bit of splat. I love creating some splatters, and just gently tap the brush and create some little splattery marks that just break up the composition a little bit more and make it a little more interesting, I hope. Some of them in that wetter area will move, not a problem. Keeping them to one colour this time, not mixing it with the oranges. I'm just using the blue to splat with. Very, very gentle movements. I want them to be as random as I can, not in long lines. You do it too harshly, you get something like that happening, which is not really what I wanted. So I'm just trying to gently tap, splatter them. Another device you can use is an old toothbrush. Just pick some pigment up and just flick it. That can be a bit more haphazard, but it's worth using. I'm just going to take off a couple of those, dry them out a little bit. And why not? Let's just put in a couple of birds into our scene, flying through. Nice little thought up here. So while I keep my hand away from the paint, let's just put in some crows, maybe. Okay, there we go. A few birds flying around just brings a little bit of life and narrative to the whole picture, and I think it's done. And you know, it is quite a random process. There is a deliberate act to start with to get the ball rolling, and from that you try and sort of see what it suggests to you, and this is what I've come up with. So hopefully you've got something from it. I enjoyed it, and I love doing this sort of thing. I'm just going to rest that one. Okay, everybody, one little abstract watercolor completed. Now, I love the not knowing part about all of this process, because you can have a whole heap of fun with it, and you never quite know what's going to do, what's going to happen. And although you set the ball rolling, you do other things during the course of it, and the final result is a little bit unknowing. And then see what it says to you, see what you want to do with it, create something from those shapes, those patterns, those forms that you've made, and hopefully it comes out as a nice image. And I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, so I'm going to see each and every one of you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye bye. Okay, everybody, I had a lot of fun doing that. I hope you did too. Now, the message that I was trying to send you was not just to experiment, but also to have fun during the course of doing that. It doesn't matter. It's a bit of paint and a piece of paper. Just enjoy that process. Now, sometimes when you do this, that you actually have an idea about what you want to achieve right at the start. Fantastic if you do. Sometimes, however, you just splash a bit of water, put a bit of colour in there and see what happens. And when it dries, that first layer dries, let it suggest something to you. I think the common word is let it speak to you. Well, speak to you or suggest you, it doesn't really matter. As long as you see something in that you want to pursue and push forward into the next part of the painting. And that's precisely what I was looking at and doing in this one. And that was the message I was trying to convey to you. So if you've made it this far in the video and you've enjoyed it, then please give it a thumbs up. That really helps the YouTube algorithms identify my channel and this video as one that's worth pushing. But if you are not a subscriber, and I do realize that about only 30% of my viewers are subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content I put out there, please give it a thumbs up and give it a subscription too. It costs you nothing. Click the bell icon and click the notifications. It just lets you know every time I upload a new video, but all of that interaction really does not cost you a thing, but it really helps push my channel out there and reach a much wider audience, and that would be fantastic, and I thank you. And if you've got any comments, put them down, because I so love to read them, and I'll always interact with them, and I'll always answer them. So put them down there, especially if you've got any ideas of what you would like to see me cover in a future video. Fantastic, that'd be great as well. And don't forget, there is my Patreon. Now it is growing. Even recently a couple of new patrons have come across, purely I think on last week's video. They saw that, they looked at my Patreon, liked what they saw, and have got involved. And I welcome the two latest ones. Thank you very much for joining my Patreon. But if you want to have a look at it, take a trip over there. There is possibly a little bit of reference for this that you can download and use for your own version of this tutorial anyway. So take a look at it, and if you want to get involved, I'd welcome you there. In the meantime, I'm just going to wish each and every one of you happy painting, happy experimentation, but above all, have lots of fun doing it. Take care, everybody. Catch you soon. Bye-bye. Response from the last one last week. Now let's start that again. Okay, everybody, welcome back. As I said just now, I am going to be doing another watercolor abstract. It's in two colors, and I fancied that. Fancied that? Really? I'm sorry. Start again then. I think because of that video. So everyone's asking me to do more, and that's what I felt like doing. And I don't like this at all, so I'm going to stop talking about that bit. We'll do it again. I'll reach a much wider audience out there, so I'd appreciate that a lot if you do that. But also add comments. That'd be a helicopter then. Great timing from the army, RAF, whoever. Let's start with that again then. Asking for much more of the same sort of thing, so I felt, why not? Let's indulge, let's have a go, and let's have some fun. So before I go any further, let's see what happens. Before I go any further, I've done all that bit, haven't I? I'm forgetting what I've done. I'm losing it.